Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the High Elves, Alariel going to be leading the Azure against the foul Greenskins. So let's go ahead and jump to the army compositions. Alariel here, in terms of her spell loadouts, got Foz Protection because I had a bit of extra spend, Earthblood, and Arcane Unforging. The Arcane Unforging is going to be the main piece here that I'm going to be focusing on, as I think it's an excellent spell against the Greenskins, probably one of the strongest spells in the game against the Greenskins right now, simply due to its recharge time effect. You can pop that on an enemy lord. Not only does it do a solid amount of damage, which Greenskins don't have any lords that have magic resistance or regeneration, so there's really no way for them to mitigate that, and it gives the WAAAGH a recharge time, which means they can't pop it in the initial charge phase of the battle. In terms of the rest of the army, we've got the Flamespire Phoenix for the magic damage, Cheap Terror, and the Flaming Phoenix Feces, of course. 3 units of Valyrian Reavers, one of which is the obligatory Heralds of the Wind, pretty much a must-pick in almost any matchup. We've also got some Dragon Princes hidden around in the woods, 3 units in total, one there, and one over on the far side. For an infantry corps, I've got 4 units of spearmen hidden in the woods here, and that's it. So a very mobile-focused High Elf army. For the Greenskins here, we've got a center line of 3 Black Orcs, flanked by 2 Orc Boys, some Goblin Archers with the Rusty Airs, Gobbo's out to the flanks. He's got some Orc Boar Boy Biggins, one of which is the Broken Tusk Mob, 2 Gobbo Big Bosses, and WAAAGH. So WAAAGH, probably the best lord choice for the Greenskins right now, simply due to the Bonewood Staff. Plus 13 melee attack, map wide is huge every time he casts a spell. My opponent's got Brain Burster and Foot of Gork, so definitely looking for more of a damage output from WAAAGH rather than a support role. So let's see how that works out for him. You can see I'm just going to be kind of pulling and playing with my opponent, kind of poking and prodding here. Obviously, my main force is hidden in the woods. I did fail to mention my opponent does have a couple of Gobbo Wolf Riders over here who are going to discover my force hidden in the woods over here, but wisely not engage. We're going to pop that Arcane Unforging off on WAAAGH, so you can hear it go off there. The damage is going to start ticking down, but more importantly, that's going to prevent him from using WAAAGH. He's going to have to go into melee because, you know, it procs a recharge time of 30 seconds, so he'd have to go into melee for 30 seconds to even be able to use WAAAGH in the first place. And that's why I think Arcane Unforging is such a strong spell in this matchup, and it really makes the High Elves stand out to me in terms of probably the best option against the Greenskins. Like, that one spell alone, I think, just preventing that WAAAGH mechanic right off the bat is super, super strong. So I know there are a handful of other factions that have other abilities that give recharge time, but Arcane Unforging also does a solid amount of single target damage. You can see here, speaking of poking and prodding, we're going to start to do some hit and run charges. Since I'm not overly worried about dealing with my opponent's mobile forces here, we're going to hit and run on those Orc Boys, go back, hit on the Gobbo Archers. WAAAGH does burn an effigy to get there, while these Heralds of the Wind are also dealing with some Gobbos. Heralds of the Wind in particular, with their good combat stats, are not going to take too much damage in this situation from those Gobbos, but yeah, we drop the Star of Avalorn here just to protect these Dragon Princes, keep them nice and healthy. A Foz Protection also going down, rocking that Life Bloom and Shield of Safri. My opponent's committed pretty heavily here, so I'm like, okay, you know what, let's just use these Dragon Princes as a momentary anvil, especially with their Foz Protection up to 69 melee defense, which is just ridiculous. We're going to drop a bit of a rear charge here with this other unit of Dragon Princes. Another Arcane Unforging, and the Flaming Phoenix comes down to deal with WAAAGH, chases him away. The Phoenix is going to turn its attention over to some of these other units here, it looks like, actually causing a terror rout for the Broken Tusk Mob and those Orc Boys, so already we're getting some effective hit and run. You can see Dragon Prince is starting to cycle charge the front line a bit, charging straight into the front of Black Orcs here. We'll be able to get some good damage done on the charge, and then pull back. My spearmen have just kind of occupied the area near this tower, content to hang back and let this mobile engagement play out. You can see you routed off the Broken Tusk Mob there, and this other unit of Orc Boar Boy Biggins going to get caught out between all my units of Cav here, which is definitely a mistake. I guess my opponent's going for a Foot of Gork here, but I actually do see the template pop up, and I'm going to pull away some of my forces in time. We do take some damage there from that Foot of Gork, but not as much as my opponent would have hoped, probably. And that's the issue with relying on Foot of Gork as your anti-Cav power. Personally, I prefer WAAAGH in more of a support role. Like if you had the Fists of Gork, for example, on that initial engagement where he used FG to get pop Fists of Gork on those Broken Tusk mob, they get a huge melee boost in terms of their stats. They also get magic damage to cut through the physical resistance that Dragon Princes have. So personally, I like the support role a little bit better for WAAAGH than a pure damage role, but WAAAGH himself going to get screened out by the Gobble Big Bosses here. At this point, the orcs are starting to push up the hill, realizing they're going to have to engage these spearmen at some point. We're going to get these Gobbos in an isolated position here, and my Illyrian Reavers have been able to deal with the Gobbos in melee. That's one of the strengths of Illyrian Reavers, is that they can deal with light cavalry like Goblin Wolf Riders with relatively little issue. They will take some damage, and it's not exactly cost effective, but you can deal with them in melee, certainly. The rest of the Dragon Princes are just going to be doing hit and run charges at this point, kind of cycling in wherever we need them, and with leadership so shaky for the Greenskins, WAAAGH's very, very low. It's going to be tough for my opponent to come back. WAAAGH's going to get caught up here, take 1 or 2 hits from the Phoenix, and get terrified. And once he gets terrified, my opponent's actually going to admit defeat, although I think it was a little bit premature. He still had some healthy Black Orcs on the field, but I mean, without WAAAGH, it would have definitely been tough to win. So, well played to my opponent. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that one. I know I had kind of theory crafted about this build a while ago, and I used a similar build in the FFA against Professor Pone, but I wanted to take the build proper, kind of how I had envisioned it, and see how it worked. And in this particular battle, it was extremely effective. Now, you can say what you want about my opponent's build. It had a lot of the elements you tend to see. You know, WAAAGH or Orc Boar Biggins, although I will say I think that Savage Orc Biggins are probably the best infantry choice in this matchup. Black Orcs are pretty decent, but they're a little slow. They don't have anti-large. They're still vulnerable to getting shot up by something like a Sister of Averlorn, although regular High Elf archers won't do nearly as much damage as something like a Savage Orc, although against my build, Savage Orcs may not have been that great because they would have faced a lot of fire from those Reaver archers. So, you know, it's tough. But I definitely think that going with a little bit more of a support role, as I mentioned with WAAAGH, is a little bit better. Fists of Gork, at the very least, I think is a must pick in this matchup because you're bound to be facing either Phoenix Guard or Dragon Princes, both of which are, you know, that Fists of Gork is going to be very useful against. I think a couple of Skulkers would have also gone a long way for my opponent as well. If he had that Smoke Bomb to help slow down the cycle charge of the Dragon Princes, that would have allowed him to get a lot more effective damage done. Let's see. You know, protecting a backline against the High Elves can be tricky just because a lot of the times they're going to go with the heavy cavalry focus, especially in this matchup. So, you know, that's something you got to think about. What tools do you have that can deal with the heavy cavalry? I mean, obviously, Broken Tusk Mob can, especially with the, again, with the Fists of Gork, giving them that magic damage and melee boost. They definitely can. There's also a few other units I would recommend here. So let's actually go to the custom battle screen. So Orc Boys are an alright pick. You know, there's certainly a lot of nuance to the Greenskin army, or infantry composition, that is, but what am I looking for? Here it is. So, yeah, personally, I would say Foot of Gork, it's nice on paper, and don't get me wrong, getting a Foot of Gork on some Ponzi Dragon Princes is probably one of the most satisfying things in the game, but for the sake of competitiveness, it can be tricky to reliably pull it off, so I prefer to take something like Fists of Gork. Headbutt's a good idea to give you that cheap Bonewood Staff proc. We're definitely going to take both those items. So this is the guys I would take WAAAGH in. Gobbo Big Boss on the Spider, you know, probably a pretty decent option as a bodyguard. I'm going to grab a couple of Savage Orc Biggins. The Black Orcs are tempting, but let's just stick with the Biggins for now. Let's actually really tank up on them. Let's grab 4 Savage Orc Biggins. We're going to get both the Gobbo Regiments of Renown, who for me are pretty much auto picks in every matchup. The one's Unbreakable, has the Fanatic cast. The other one is immune to Psychology and has Armor Sundering, which both of those traits are pretty much always going to be useful. We're going to get a couple of Skulkers to protect the back line and a couple of Gobbos to be meat shields as well. These guys are going to kind of screen out towards the edge of the formation, try and soak up missiles if possible. Speaking of mobility, we're going to grab some Mangy Marauders, and at this point we have a few options. We definitely want to grab the Broken Tusk Mob, and then you have another 1,400 points to play with, so maybe you grab another Orc Boar Biggin and like some more Gobbos. Maybe you grab Gobbo Wolf Riders aren't a bad idea here, or maybe you grab like some Spider Rider Archers to run with the Mangy Marauders to give them some poison as well as the AP. You know, something like that. Again, this is kind of just theory crafting, but I think something like this might be pretty decent. yeah, the arcane unforging is a problem that you're really not going to have a way to avoid, at least until they add someone like Grom the Paunch, who has regeneration. Fat Gobbo regenerating Chariot Lord, for those of you not versed in his lore. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. That's it for this particular video. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.